The gavel came down hard. Judge Beryl Howell's voice cut through the federal courtroom like a blade. "Congresswoman Crockett, you will not turn my courtroom into political theater." The silence that followed was the kind that stops clocks. But Jasmine Crockett did not flinch. She did not step back. Standing straight, her eyes locked on the bench, she spoke in a voice so steady it seemed to carry the weight of generations. "Your Honor, with all due respect, the Constitution does not end at your bench." The gallery froze. Reporters stopped mid-sentence, and in that instant something larger than a legal hearing was unfolding. This was a collision. On one side sat Judge Howell, 63, silver-haired, steel-eyed, a federal veteran who had commanded her courtroom for over a decade with discipline and cold authority. Attorneys feared her interruptions. Lawyers dreaded her impatience. She represented the institution, the robe, the weight of tradition. On the other side stood Crockett, 42, Congresswoman from Texas, a civil rights attorney forged not in ivory towers, but in the hard-fought trenches of grassroots advocacy. Her navy suit, her natural hair, her squared shoulders, everything about her said, "I have been here before and I will not be moved." The case itself centered on newly passed election laws. Restrictions on early voting, tighter ID requirements, limits on mail-in ballots. Supporters called it security. Critics called it suppression. To Judge Howell, it was a matter of statutory interpretation. To Crockett, it was democracy on trial. When Crockett rose to speak, she brought more than legal briefs. She brought history. "These laws do not strengthen democracy, Your Honor. They strangle it." The judge interrupted, then again and again. But each time Crockett adjusted, regrouped and pressed forward, citing Brown v. Board, the Voting Rights Act, the 14th Amendment, until the courtroom itself felt like it was tilting. And the moment that changed everything was still coming. When Crockett raised her open palm and said, "Respectfully, Your Honor, I am not lecturing, I am reminding," the courthouse seemed to exhale. She reminded the judge that Article 1 established Congress before the courts existed, that the people's representatives granted the judiciary its authority, and that authority, she made clear, does not place any judge above the Constitution. It binds them to it. No one moved. For nearly 30 seconds the room held its breath. Then it broke like a flood. Reporters sprinted into hallways. Civil rights attorneys shook their heads in quiet awe. Students clutched their notes, knowing they would one day tell their grandchildren they were present. Within hours, Crockett's words had crossed the country. By nightfall, anchors were replaying them on a loop. The ACLU praised her. The NAACP called her "stand a necessary rebuke." Law professors assigned the confrontation as a case study. Activists made it a rallying cry. Judge Howell faced a different tide. Over 200 ethics complaints arrived within the week. Peers whispered she had overstepped. A reputation once unshakable now carried a visible crack. But beyond careers and headlines, something deeper had shifted. Ordinary Americans, so often fatigued by political noise, suddenly found themselves talking about the Constitution, about voting rights, judicial temperament, and the true meaning of democracy, not as abstract ideas, as urgent ones. Because what Jasmine Crockett did that day was not simply win an argument. She reminded a nation that the Constitution is a living document, not a trophy on a shelf, that it belongs not to robes or gavels, but to the people willing to defend it, in courtrooms, in classrooms, in communities, and at the ballot box. The gavel may strike, power may intimidate, but as that day proved, one steady voice, prepared and principled, can make even the most rigid halls of authority pause. And that, in the end, is what democracy depends on.